Welcome to another episode of Jamming with Jason. Hey, today I have a very special episode for you. And why? Because today is actually the 300th episode of Jamming with Jason. So, whatever you do, take a listen to this entire episode because I'm going to kind of recap some of the things that I have learned over doing 300. I know, 300. Can you believe it? Episodes just on this podcast, plus I've got hundreds others as well. So plug in, and here we go with that episode. All right. Well, like I said in the intro, I cannot believe it, but it has actually been, this is the 300th episode of Jamming with Jason. And so I just wanted to kind of go through today and probably talk a little bit about, again, this is going to be one of those kind of unscripted ones where I've got a few notes kind of written down, but I just want to talk about a few topics because I thought it would be interesting for me to just kind of share what I have learned in doing these episodes, right? I mean, again, you've probably been listening to many of them as well. I'm sure you've kind of picked up and learned certain things, but I thought I would just share a few of the things that I have actually learned by doing the podcast, ways that I've kind of changed my life, things that I'm working on, and some of the reasons maybe behind why I do some of the stuff that I do, because if you're listening, if you've been following me for a while and watching the videos and other things like that, you might be thinking, this guy's a little bit crazy. Well, yeah, but I'm crazy like a fox, right? There's actually usually, most of the time, there is a reason behind why I do what I do. And so I'll share some of that with you. Some of it I got to keep a little mystery, so that I can keep my international man of mystery kind of cloak and dagger sort of stuff. But anyway, here we go. And so let's just kind of jump in. Now, one of the things that I have learned is to be responsible. Be responsible. And why do I bring that up? Well, because I see a lot of people, and I find myself sometimes not being responsible. And so, what does that mean? Well, if you think about all of the different things that you might have in your life, all of the different emotions that you might feel, you are the only one who is responsible for that. Now, in previous episodes, we've talked about things like victor and victim and things like that, and how, as I look around the world, a lot of people play the victim. They're blaming other people instead of taking responsibility for themselves. Now, why is that a big deal, right? Well, because when you end up playing victim, you often fall into some of these kind of negative emotions. And so I'll just give you an example, okay? Because one of the things that I like to say, and again, this might be a little harsh for you. So, but the fact is, nobody can offend you. Did you hear that? Nobody can offend you. Now, you might be sitting there saying, are you kidding, Jason? This person the other day said something and that offended me. Well, the fact that they said something didn't offend you. You chose to be offended by what they said. And often when we do that, we aren't even understanding the intention behind maybe what that person said. Most of the time when people say things, their intention is not to offend you. It is not necessarily to hurt your feelings. Now, again, I know that there are some people out there that are mean and that do try to hurt other people. Okay, so I understand that. I totally get that. But go back to the little thing that we used to say on the playground all the time when I was little. And I had to remind myself of this a lot, right? Because I was the weird little kid with the big ears, and I got picked on. I got bullied as I was growing up. And so I used to say to myself all the time, and I still do today, because there's still people who like to kind of bully me a little bit. Okay. But here's the saying, right? You probably heard this before. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. So if you remember that, and again, remember that if for example you get offended by something that someone says, that's your choice, okay? And if you take responsibility for that and actually get out of that quicker, um, that's a choice, right? You can choose to be offended, you can choose to be angry, you can choose to be whatever, right? Or you can choose to just let it go, okay? Now, I bring this up because, again, and I want to talk about the word shame as well in here, because this happens to me all the time, right? I mean, when you're public, sending out emails to tens of thousands of people, when you're on social media, saying things, inevitably somebody's going to say something to try to hurt you. Somebody's going to try to say something, or they might be offended by something that you said, right? And they usually let you have it when that's the case. So in the last week or so, in one of the email campaigns that one of my companies did, there were some people, we were just trying to have fun, right? Because a lot of the people in this industry are boring, boring, right? And one of the company values is we like to have fun. So we just had some fun. We made some jokes, right? The whole thing was kind of a joke, but there was some tongue in cheek in it, right? And so again, I mean, if you read it and you understood it, if it was a joke, you should have been laughing on the floor like I was, right? When I somebody on my team came up with the email, I was just rolling on the floor laughing because I thought it was funny, right? And again, it was something that I'm sure 99% of the people would find funny. Now, how do I know that? Because these same kinds of things that we were joking about are on all the TV shows. People comedians are saying these kinds of things all the time. And so, but things like, cold showers and, thinking about baseball. Okay, those have some sexual undertones to them, right? But they're things that people find funny, right? Because they've been used in jokes all the time, in movie lines. And like I said, 99% of people are laughing about these things all the time. Now, the fact that it was in an email from a company offended certain people, right? So I got a few nasty emails from people that I didn't even respond to, right? Because, when you argue with an idiot, you prove there are two, right? And so there's just some things that are better left unsaid because I didn't want to get into their negative energy. But if I were to respond back to them, I'd probably piss them off more, because what I'd tell them is, you know what, you chose to be offended. You chose to not find what we thought was funny when most of the time you would find it funny, right? And so the fact that you kind of throw this back at somebody when you probably were laughing at the same things just in a different context, you're choosing to go there. It was not our intention to offend anybody. Our intention was to make people laugh, right? And have something hit their email that was funny, that would make them laugh, would make them smile during the day, right? And so, why do I say that? Well, and I want to bring up, because I told you the word shame. And if you've heard me talk before about, and you're going to hear me talk a lot more about this probably in the future, but there are different frequencies associated with the different emotions that we can feel. And in fact, shame and guilt are some of the worst emotions that you can feel. Lowest frequency, it just makes people feel like shit. Okay. And the problem is, a lot of times when things like this come up, not only is somebody offended, but they choose to take it out on someone else by saying things like, shame on you for doing that. Shame on you. Now, we should never say that, okay? Because as I said, shame is one of the lowest frequency emotions, and I would never want anyone to feel shame. So if you find yourself shaming other people, stop it, okay? because again, just let it go. Just let it go and move on. Okay, take responsibility for it. Realize again, if you're angry about something, if if you feel indignation about something, it's you. It's not the other person. Okay, because again, as I said, probably their intention has nothing to do with it. Now, let me move on to the next one, which is, the title of this podcast, which is Brass in Pocket. And you might be sitting there going, Brass in Pocket, what does that mean? Well, if you're familiar with the Pretenders song, Brass in Pocket, okay, I want to talk a little bit about that. Not the song itself, but a different kind of brass that you might find in your pocket, or technically copper, okay? So here's where we go. So I heard a story, and I might get this wrong a little bit, but I think it's good from I always find it interesting how people get titles to songs. And so the story that I heard was the Pretenders were over in England doing some shows, and they were hanging out with. I think they were probably staying, at the apartment with some other musicians there in England. And the way the story kind of goes, somebody was talking about, hey, you need to go get your clothes cleaned, because I think one of the guys had like, crumpled, dirty clothing or something like that. And he goes, oh, mate, I can't do that. I ain't got no brass in pocket to pay for it. And Chrissy Hines heard that and she thought, brass in pocket. Wow, that's great. I got to use that as a title for a song. So I got brass in pocket. Da, 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 da. Anyway, if you know the song, you know the song, right? But what I want to talk about briefly is brass in pocket, or even more, an analogy of pennies in your pocket. Okay, because here's another thing that I have learned, and this is one thing, again, I'm working on this. I'm a work in process like everyone else is. But here's what ends up happening, right? Is throughout your day, there are different things that people might say to you. There's different emotions you might feel. You might start having that, little devil on your shoulder, or the monkey chatter going on that moves you into emotions like anxiety and fear and shame and guilt. And every time that you do that, all of those thoughts that you're having, I want you to think about the fact that every time you have thoughts, good or bad thoughts, you're kind of throwing them in a backpack that you're carrying on your back. So we can use the backpack example, or we can also use a pocket, right? And again, I know ladies, a lot of times you don't have pockets in your pants because of fashion or whatever else, but as a guy, I like pockets. I put stuff in my pocket, right? And so another thing that you can think about is every time those things happen, and some of those traumas and other things that are happening, you're putting them in a backpack or you're putting them in your pocket. Now, what ends up happening is we get heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier the more of these things that we put in our backpack or our pocket. And every so often, and I love the pennies in the pocket example, because one of my friends and I were talking about this, um, where sometimes you go and you stick your hand in your pocket and you pull out a few pennies, and you look at them, and often those pennies are some of those traumas or other things that we've lived through, and sometimes it's good to just throw the pennies out, right? And so there's a lot of times there's things like fountains and ponds and other things where people will throw coins into, right? A wishing well. But you can also think of it too as, when you pull out those pennies, maybe those are some things that no longer serve you, that you no longer want to hold on to. So throw out the pennies, right? But what ends up happening so much of the time is we pull it out, we look at the pennies, and we think, you know what, that trauma, that experience, that grudge that I am holding against someone else, I'm just not willing to get rid of it yet. And so you put the brass back in your pocket, right? And so again, here, in the England, it's brass in pocket, right? Because they use brass as their coinage a lot of times. Here in the US, we have pennies, which are copper colored, right? But think of it the same way, right? Is in where in your life are you pulling out, you're looking at some of those pennies and you're choosing to put them back in your pocket or put them back in your backpack. Now, the more you do that and the more things you add to it, the heavier you get, right? Do you ever feel heavy and sluggish and oh my gosh, right? Well, the only way to change that is to start throwing out the pennies and start taking off your backpack and removing those rocks out of your backpack. Okay. Now, simple thing that I've been starting to work on that you could start working on if you'd like to is at the end of each day, take off your backpack, throw out your pennies, finish the day without carrying those things forward. Just let them go before you go to sleep. So that way, when you get up in the morning, you don't have to deal with it anymore. Those things are already gone. The past is gone anyway. Focus on the present moment. Now, I know you might say, well, that sounds so easy, Jason, but it ain't that easy. I know, I get it. I'm going through the same thing that you are as well, right? You might wake up the next morning and some of those thoughts are still there. Well, just try to get them out of your head. Get them out of your head, sweep them out, throw the pennies out. And again, I might do a whole episode on this in the future, but just wanted to bring that up too. Is one of those things that I have learned in going through a lot of these podcast episodes that really is helping and making a difference in my life. Take off your backpack, throw out your pennies. Okay. Now, another thing that I've learned, and I've done lots of interviews with people, and one thing is that is so important is to keep hope alive. Keep hope alive, right? Because if you don't have some sort of hope or something that you're looking forward to in the future, life can be a pretty miserable place. And so do what you can to keep hope alive for yourself, but also to give hope to other people, right? One of the greatest gifts that you can give to other people is to give them hope, right? Because as we talked about, everybody's got to be responsible for themselves. Everybody's got to do their own push-ups, right? You, you got to do a lot of life on your own, but man, does it make a difference when you feel hope and encouragement from other people to help you through some of those hard times. So if you'll notice, if you go back and you think about some of the interviews that I have done with people, one of the reasons why I have interviewed some of the people that I have and why I do interviews a lot of the times on the podcast is to provide you with hope. If you can see that other people are doing it, that I've done it, right, then that gives you some hope in knowing that, hey, you know what? If other people have done it, that means I can do it too, right? And so look at that. Look at all those different things around you and keep hope alive. Now, another thing that I have learned as well, and these two kind of go together a little bit, is about being authentic or being authentically you. So there are so many people, and there's a term called hero worship, Hero, hero worship, where a lot of times we will look up to or we will idolize certain people and then we try to become them. We dress like them, we talk like them, we try to do the same things as them. And I understand, right? Because again, some of that goes back to hope of wanting something different, wanting a life kind of like somebody else does, but you have to do it authentic to you, okay? Because what I see so much of the time is, people, maybe let's say there's somebody that you really admire and you want to become like them. And so you start dressing and talking and acting, and maybe you change your profession, right, to be the same kind of profession that they are. But the problem is, so much of the time, you're just copying what other people are doing. Now, it works for the other person, but it probably won't work exactly the same for you. And so, what's important is for you to do whatever it is, being authentic to who you actually are, right? So, again, I use a lot of lyrics, movie lines, other things like that, because I'm just kind of weird because I like it. Hey, if you like it, fine. You can adopt part of that as well, but I don't want you to be me. I want you to be you. Okay. And there's a great, I think it's an Under Armour commercial that I've seen playing on TV recently. And it's got Morgan Freeman and Tom Brady in it. And so it shows this kid, and Morgan Freeman is this football player, this young man who is a football player. And Morgan Freeman, you just hear Morgan Freeman's voice, and it's in the letter kind of goes like this. It says, I heard you're the next Tom Brady, but you are not the next Tom Brady. You are the next you, right? And so again, it was a letter of encouragement to this young person of, hey, you know what? People are maybe comparing you to Tom Brady, but don't try to be Tom Brady. Be the best you that you can be. And so, of course, at the end, spoiler alert, at the end of the ad, of course, that shows Morgan Freeman and Tom Brady, and Morgan Freeman looks at Tom Brady and says, "You wrote this?" And Tom goes, "Yep." Right. So again, he's trying to encourage people to be the best that he can be, but not to be him, right? So again, figure out, what is it that's unique about you? What do you like? What are your quirks? What are your weird things? And just be more of that, right? Because the world is such a better place when we are all unique to ourselves, right? Imagine how boring music would be is if everyone just copied everyone else. And so all you have is the same kind of music, same kind of sound, same chord progressions the whole time, because everybody's just trying to be like everyone else. And I know in pop music a lot of that is the case, right? But what you can see is how much better the world actually is when each artist or each musician, might get inspired by other people, but then they make the music their own, right? So make your life your own. Be authentic to who you are, and don't try to be someone else. Because the problem is, after a while, you're just pretending again, and you got to start all over. Now, music is one of those things that's, I don't know, I just like it, right? I mean, I play music, I love listening to music. And so one of the ways that I'm being more authentically myself as well is to incorporate and use more music, right? And so you'll see, if you've been listening, for the full 4 years that I've been having the podcast, you'll see quite a big shift, right? And so now I'm actually pulling out the guitar a little bit more often. I'm singing to you. I'm talking about some different things, and I'm not perfect, right? I'm not a professional musician. I make mistakes. Again, that's on purpose, right? I'm sharing and helping you realize you don't have to be perfect to share your gifts with other people, right? I know actually one of the podcast episodes that I recorded, I wasn't very happy with it. In fact, I almost deleted it and didn't post it. And then, but I did. And you know what? Somebody actually said, you know what? That podcast was one of the most impactful on me, because you made a bunch of mistakes, but it was talking about something that I needed to hear. And it helped me just actually do some stuff, right? And so again, to me, as the artist, as the creator, I almost didn't share that, right? But it shows that just share who you are. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just share who you are, share what you know, share the love that you have. because every time we do that, we're making an impact on somebody's life, a lot of times that you don't even know, right? I mean, I don't know the full impact that this podcast is having on people. I know that tens of thousands of people every month listen to it. I don't get very much feedback on it, but I'm still going to show up and share because I know that what I'm doing must be making a difference in the world for those that many people to continue listening month after month, right? So you're going to start hearing more about music. You're also going to start hearing more about spirituality from me, right? I've actually held back a little bit. Again, if you've kind of read in between the lines, I grew up very religious. I went to being an atheist for a while, then an agnostic, and now I'm very spiritual, what some people might call woo. And it's a part of me that is important. And I think a lot of people have gone through the same kinds of things. And so if I can help share the path that I've been on and what's worked for me, that again, hopefully will help other people who are like me as well. Okay. Now, the last thought for today is change is required. Okay, that again, as I've gone through and done all of these different episodes, and I've seen myself change over the last 4 years as well. If you're happy exactly where you are, you don't need to do anything different, right? Just keep doing whatever routine you're doing if you're happy exactly where you are. But what I know is a lot of people who listen to me, I know myself, we're not happy just staying where we are. We're lifelong learners, right? We want to learn more. We want to experience more. We want different things, right? We want more, better, whatever, right? And again, not from a greedy perspective, but I cannot imagine myself if I wasn't learning, right? I mean, learning and sharing are they're things I love to do, right? So I got to keep doing them. But if you want something different in your life, that means something has to change, right? Because what got you here won't get you there. Some change is required. Sometimes that change means different things, right? It might mean changing relationships. It might mean changing where you live. It might mean changing your job. It might mean growing a beard. Okay, I never thought that I would grow a beard, but for some reason I did, right? And I changed, and now I like it. Okay, but change is required, and I know that change sometimes takes a lot of courage to do. And again, that's one of the reasons why when you show up here and you listen, I hope that you're feeling hope that you can change, that you can have the courage to change, that you can see other people change in their life and realize that whatever change you want in your life is also possible. But it does mean that you're going to have to take some action. You're going to have courage in order to do that. But I promise you, if you want something different and you're willing to make the change, you can have whatever you want in life if you are willing to put in the work. And that work usually means change. But I can also tell you this, it's not as hard to change as people think. Okay, the world would tell you things like, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. To which I would say, bullshit. Okay, you can teach an old dog new tricks because I'm an old dog and I'm learning new tricks every single day. Okay, and again, I'm going to share with you some more of the things that I have seen in my life that have worked, and what I've seen from other people as well, right? Because again, I want you to have the best that you can have in life, whatever that happens to be. Okay, so those are some random thoughts from today's 300th episode. So, hopefully, as we've been going through this, you've been taking a mental note. You've been asking yourself some questions, right? Do you want to change? What are some things that you want to change? Are there some areas in your life where you're not being as responsible as you could be? You know, are you giving hope to other people? Do you feel hope yourself? Are you feeling the kinds of emotions that you want to feel, or do you want things to be different? Are you being authentically you, or are you just pretending and being someone else? Or just pretending and being who others expect you to be, right? Because when you start asking yourself some of those questions, you start to get some clarity on where it is that you want to go and what it is that you want to do, right? Because again, that's one of my big end goals, folks. That's why I show up here and do this free podcast and talk to you and bring on interviews, is to give you that hope, to give you that courage, to help you feel safe, and to realize that you can have anything in life that you want, especially when you're jamming with Jason. All right. And so with that, share this episode with somebody, right? Share it. If you found value, other people will find value too. If you haven't subscribed, click the little subscribe button, right? We're on all the players. So wherever you're listening to it, you can click subscribe. Even on YouTube, you can click subscribe on YouTube, right? If you missed previous episodes, all 300 are cataloged over on my website, jasonmefford.com. You can always go out there and look at them there too, right? Along with the detailed show notes. But, again, if you're finding value in this, other people are going to find value too. And if you're finding value in it, don't you feel better at the end of listening to one of these episodes? So what if you listened every week? What if you put it on your calendar that every week I'm going to listen? I do this with other podcasts too. Sometimes I'll go back and binge listen to previous episodes that I've missed. You can do that too, right? There's 300 episodes out there. You can spend all the time you want. So anyway, enough of that. Thanks for listening, and make sure that you have a great week this week, and I'll catch you on the next episode when we do Jamming with Jason again. See ya.